Addressing GBV. International instruments. International instruments which address sexual and gender-based violence ensure that states oblige to regulations and standards and incorporate these international standards into local legislations and policy reform. There are several international instruments to address sexual and gender-based violence. Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, CEDAW, UN Security Council Resolution 1325, UN Security Council Resolution 1820, Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 5. The Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women, CEDAW, and UN Security Council Resolution 1325 are two key international mechanisms which have been adapted locally in Sri Lankan laws, policy, and practice. CEDAW is an international treaty adopted in 1979 by the United Nations General Assembly. It sets up an agenda for national action and promotes basic human rights and achieves progress and overcome barriers of discrimination against women. What is covered in the CEDAW? Political, social, economic, cultural, and civil rights of women. How is this human rights treaty brought into action? It must be acceded to or ratified by state party to have effect. What is CEDAW's reporting and accountability mechanism? Governments must report to the CEDAW Committee on progress made toward gender equality every 4 years. The situation of women in armed conflict scenarios is required by the committee to be included. The CEDAW consists of 30 articles which define what constitutes discrimination against women and sets up an agenda for national action to end such discrimination. The articles define discrimination, address elimination of discriminatory laws, policies, and practices, focus on measures which upholds women's equality in social, economic, and cultural fields, modify or eliminate practices based on assumption about the inferiority or superiority of either sex. Subsequent to ratifying the CEDAW Convention, there have been monumental changes made in laws, policies, and practices to address gender-based violence in Sri Lanka. Some key reforms include enactment of Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, setting up of women and children's desks in police stations, introduction of a 25% quota system for women's representation in politics. UN Resolution 1325 recognizes that women have been active in peace building and conflict prevention. It is a Security Council resolution which automatically binds all member states. UN Resolution 1325 calls for all participants in peacekeeping operations and peace negotiations to adopt a gender perspective. It recognizes women's right to participate as decision makers at all levels, calls to adopt a gender perspective in peacekeeping operations and negotiations, recognizes that women are disproportionately affected in wars, calls upon all parties in armed conflict respect women's rights, to protect women from gender-based violence, and to end impunity for crimes of violence against women and girls, calls for gender training for those involved in peace building, calls for more equitable representation of women throughout the peacekeeping operations. UN Resolution 1325 is to date considered a progressive move of placing women in the heart of security matters by articulating the importance of women's equal and full participation as active agents in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, peace building, and peacekeeping. The UN, member states, and their national governments, donors, and all actors of the conflict are obligated to implement the elements of CEDAW and UNSCR 1325. Civil society has a central role in this implementation and monitoring process.